What happens when a seasoned daytime host decides to test the patience of a prince on live television? The answer became crystal clear during what was supposed to be a routine interview and, instead, spiraled into a slow-motion car crash broadcast. To millions, Prince Harry walked into the View studio that morning expecting polite conversation, some light promotion for his latest environmental campaign, and maybe a few laughs. He wasn't prepared for Joy Behar, and he definitely wasn't prepared for the ambush. Before we go further, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because what you're about to hear is one of the most tense royal TV appearances of all time. Harry adjusted his tie as the cameras rolled. The lights felt hotter than usual. The air felt heavier. He sensed something was off. Across from him, Joy Behar sat with that mischievous glint one longtime viewers had come to recognize as a storm warning, the kind of look that meant the gloves were about to come off. "So, Prince Harry," Joy began, her tone overly sweet, "let's talk about your latest environmental project. You've been very vocal about climate change, flying around the world to speak at conferences. Tell me, how many private jets did you take last month alone?" The audience chuckled nervously. Harry blinked. That wasn't the opening he'd prepped for. His media training kicked in. "Well, Joy," he said with practiced calm, "I think the important thing is the message we're sharing about protecting the planet for future generations." Joy leaned in, her smile hardening. "Oh, absolutely," she said, her voice now coated in sarcasm. "Because nothing says protect the planet like burning fuel at 30,000 feet. Gasps, awkward silence, and she wasn't done. "But let's move on to something even more interesting. Your wife, Meghan's been quite busy with her projects. Tell me, how does it feel being the +1 in your own marriage?" The air was sucked out of the studio. Even the co-hosts looked blindsided. Joy had gone rogue. Harry's jaw tightened, subtle, controlled, but noticeable. "I'm incredibly proud of my wife," he said evenly, "and I think any true partnership means supporting each other's individual pursuits." "Partnership," Joy repeated, like the word offended her. "That's an interesting way to put it, because from where I'm sitting, it looks more like you traded one palace for another kind of prison. At least in Buckingham Palace, you had actual power. Now, you're what exactly? A Hollywood house husband?" The silence that followed was deafening. Producers in the control room froze. Camera operators zoomed in. They knew this was no longer an interview. This was a confrontation. Harry's hands gripped the armrests. His knuckles turned white. He inhaled sharply, then spoke. "I think you're mischaracterizing the situation," he said, voice lower, no measured, but with a bite. "My wife and I work as a team. We've built something meaningful together in America." Joy arched a brow. "Built something meaningful," she echoed. "Or built a brand?" Another gasp. Another line crossed, and this time, Harry didn't let it slide. "Joy," he said, and the temperature dropped. "I came on the show to talk about causes that matter: climate change, mental health service, not to be mocked for building a life on our own terms. I'm not here to explain my marriage or apologize for leaving a toxic environment behind." Joy opened her mouth, but Harry cut her off. "If you'd like to have a real conversation, I'm all in. But if this is just an excuse to take cheap shots and score headlines, then I'll excuse myself now." The audience didn't cheer. They didn't boo. They just sat stunned. Joy blinked. Her smirk faltered. And for the first time, she looked unsure. Sarah Haynes finally spoke, trying to regain control. "Maybe we should pivot to the prince's latest documentary." But it was too late. The damage was done. And Prince Harry, he sat tall, expression calm, voice level, but every word hit like a royal decree. "I've been through media firestorms. I've dealt with tabloid attacks. But what I never expected was to be ambushed by someone who should know better." Then he stood, straightened his blazer, and said, with quiet precision, "Dignity doesn't come from where you're born. It comes from how you carry yourself when the cameras are rolling." And with that, he walked off the set. No security. No seeing dot, just grace under fire. A legacy moment that would ripple through television. History for years to come. Joy laughed, harsh, brittle. "Oh, you mean your Netflix deal? The one that's produced what, exactly? Or the Spotify contract? That got canceled faster than a bad pilot." She leaned in, voice dripping with mockery. "Face it, Harry. You're living off your royal name while trashing the very institution that gave it value in the first place." Harry's composure flickered. "That's not accurate," he said, his voice taut. "We've been very transparent about why we stepped back, and it had nothing to do with profiting from titles." Joy scoffed. "Please. You stepped back because you couldn't handle the pressure. And now you want it both ways. All the perks of being royal, none of the responsibility." She held up her hands theatrically. "It's like quitting your job and still expecting the paycheck." The other hosts shifted uncomfortably, sensing the temperature dropping. But Joy wasn't done. "And let's talk about your family," she continued, her voice now cutting like ice. "You've spent years publicly unloading on people who can't defend themselves. I mean, what kind of man throws his own father and brother under the bus for a payday?" "That did it?" Harry's jaw clenched. His face flushed red. When he spoke, again, the tremble in his voice was impossible to miss. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said, leaning forward. "You have no idea what we've endured." Joy raised an eyebrow like a judge waiting to deliver sentence. "Endured," she repeated, incredulous. "Oh, honey, you're a millionaire prince living in a Montecito mansion. What are you enduring having to work like the rest of us?" Silence fell. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate. Harry stared at her, his breathing shallow, his fury barely contained. "You think this is entertainment, don't you?" he said. "You think my pain, my family's pain, is just material for your next punchline." Joy didn't flinch. If anything, she looked more energized. "No, Harry," she said coolly. "You turned it into entertainment. The only difference between us is I'm not pretending it's noble." Harry's hands trembled visibly now. This wasn't just an interview anymore, this was a dissection. And Joy had the scalpel. "You want to talk about noble," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "Noble is trying to protect your wife and child from the same machine that killed your mother." Joy rolled her eyes. "Oh, here we go," she said. "The Diana card." Harry froze. "Your mother died in a car accident over 25 years ago. At some point, Harry, you have to stop using that tragedy as a shield for every bad decision you make." The studio gasped. Even the camera operators stopped moving. One of the co-hosts started to interject. "Joy, maybe we should." "Maybe we should what?" Joy snapped. "Pretend like he hasn't been dining out on his mother's memory. For decades, Diana was beloved, but she's not here to stop being used as emotional blackmail every time her son needs sympathy." Harry stood up so fast, his chair clattered backward. His face was crimson. His voice, when it came, was low and shaken. "How dare you? You didn't know her. You have no right to speak about her like that." Joy, unbothered, tilted her head like she was watching a child throw a tantrum. "Sit down, Harry," she said calmly. "You're embarrassing yourself." He stared at her like she'd slapped him. "I'm embarrassing myself," he repeated, voice cracking. "You just mocked my dead mother on national television, Anne. I'm the one embarrassing myself." "I didn't mock anyone," Joy said. "Coolly, I pointed out that you've turned her memory into your brand. There's a difference." Though I can see why you wouldn't want to admit it, Harry remained standing, swaying slightly like the floor beneath him was giving way. The co-hosts sat frozen. The producers were signaling wildly off camera, but the feed stayed live. "You're a disgusting human being," Harry said quietly. Joy smiled. "And you're a spoiled little boy who never grew up," she fired back. "You think because you were born into privilege, the world owes you something. Newsflash, Prince, nobody cares about your feelings. We all have pain. The difference is, most of us don't publish memoirs about our daddy issues." "Stop," Harry whispered, voice frayed. "Just stop." "Stop what?" Telling the truth, Joy's voice sharpened again. "You came here to promote another project. But what you're really selling is the same tired sob story. Poor little rich boy, misunderstood, victimized by the family that gave you everything." Harry's breathing became labored. He looked around desperately for help, for dignity. For an exit, none came. The co-hosts watched with pity. The cameras kept rolling, and Joyun relenting delivered the final cut. "You know what I think, Harry?" she said. "I think you're furious. Because deep down, you know I'm right. You've built an empire out of victimhood, and you can't stand the fact that someone finally called your bluff." "That's not true," Harry said softly, but even he could hear how hollow it sounded. Joy didn't flinch. She leaned in, smelling blood. Isn't it? Let's lay it out. A military career curated to protect you, a royal wedding, watched by half the planet, a life of wealth, palaces, and global admiration. And yet, somehow, you're the victim. Somehow, everyone else is to blame for your choices. There was a pause, just long enough for the audience to feel the chill settle over the room. Joy was satisfied. She had just undressed a prince on live television and she was relishing every second. If the institution is so cruel, why still use the title? Why not just be Harry Mountbatten Windsor, private citizen? Why cling to Prince Harry if it's brought you nothing but pain? The question hung there, sharp as glass. Harry opened his mouth, then closed it again for the first time since the segment began. He looked completely unguarded, like someone who had walked into a trap with no idea how deep it went. Joy didn't wait. "I'll tell you why," she said, cutting the silence. Like a scalpel. Because without that title, you're just another mediocre, middle-aged man with opinions. The title is the only reason anyone still listens. That landed. Harry sat down slowly, shoulders caving in slightly. He looked drained. Beaten when he spoke again, his voice barely registered above the hum of studio lights. "You don't understand," he said. "None of you understand what it's like to live in that world." Joy snorted. "You're right, I don't," she said mockingly. "And castles must be so exhausting." "It is exhausting," Harry snapped, and this time the pain in his voice was undeniable. To watch the people you love be devoured by an institution that values image more than humanity. Even Joy seemed momentarily caught off guard by the sincerity in his voice, but she recovered fast. "So you left," she said, cold again. "You made your choice. You can't leave the system and spend years profiting off it. You can't have it both ways." The silence was heavy now. His eyes, however, burned, and when he finally spoke again, the change in him was undeniable. The diplomatic mask was gone. What remained was sharper, rawer, dangerous. "You want to talk about having it both ways," he said, voice low and steady. "Fine, let's talk. You sit here every day, tearing apart people you've never met. You profit from scandal, from trauma. You serve it to your audience with a grin and call it journalism." Joy's smile faltered. The first crack. "I'm a talk show host," she said quickly. "Is it your job to mock dead mothers for ratings? Because that's what you just did, and you smiled while doing it?" Suddenly, the dynamic had flipped. Now it was Joy on the defensive. "You want to talk about privilege," Harry continued, voice rising with each word. "You've sat in that chair for decades, making millions, judging people you'll never meet. You've never served in a war zone, never lived under constant threat, and now you want to lecture me about using my mother's memory? Every time you bring her up, every time you twist her death into a weapon to score points against me, you're the one exploiting." The other co-hosts sat frozen, watching this reversal unfold in real time. "No," Harry cut her off, sharp and final. "You weren't making a point. You were being vicious. And the worst part, you enjoyed it. I saw it in your eyes. You enjoyed trying to break me down on national television." "I don't get off on anything," she muttered defensively. Harry didn't smile, didn't blink, didn't back down. "You've said all day." What followed was the kind of silence you only hear on television when something real has happened, something unscripted, something unforgettable. And as the segment faded out, one truth lingered like smoke. This wasn't just a clash of egos. It was the day a prince stopped playing the diplomat and finally fought back. "I'm doing my job," Joy snapped. Harry's reply was instant, cold, precise, surgical. "Your job is to interview guests," he said, voice like frost, "not to psychologically torture them. What you just did wasn't journalism. It was cruelty packaged for ratings." He locked eyes with her. "And you call me the one profiting off pain." The words landed like blows. Joy shifted in her seat, no longer the hunter, but the hunted. Her usual armor of snark and superiority was slipping fast. "You better than me," she muttered. Harry didn't blink. "No," he said, "but I speak from my life, my family, my trauma. You just spent 20 minutes tearing apart people you've never met, relationships you don't understand, pain you've never felt. How is that noble? What purpose does it serve besides feeding your ego?" Joy opened her mouth, but the words weren't there. Even she could hear how empty her defense sounded. "I'm holding you accountable," she tried. Harry stepped forward, not fleeing, not backing down. Towering, accountable. He echoed, "For what? For choosing my wife over a system that was crushing us? For leaving a toxic environment to protect my family's mental health? For refusing to dance on command for tabloids and talk shows like yours?" The studio was dead silent now. Every eye was on him, every breath held. "You want to talk about accountability?" Harry said, his voice now deeper, commanding. "It's owning your mistakes. It's acknowledging when you've gone too far. It's remembering that behind every headline is a human being. You don't get to call it your job when what you're doing is cruelty in costume." Joy looked around for backup. None came. Her co-hosts weren't moving. They were watching Harry, eyes wide, silent, maybe even respectful. "I came here," Harry continued, voice calm, now to talk about a charity that helps children who've lost parents in war zones, innocent kids with real grief, kids who won't get documentaries or memoirs, who won't be asked onto talk shows to defend their pain. He turned to the camera. "If you want to learn more about that, work about something real, it's all online. The links are available. Please, focus on them, not this." He looked back at Joy one last time. His gaze was steady, his voice like quiet thunder. "Asked why I still use my title if the institution caused me pain. Here's your answer. Because I was raised to believe that privilege means responsibility. That if you're given a platform, you use it to lift people up, not tear them down." He paused, then added, "Maybe that's the lesson you never learned." Joy tried to speak. Nothing came out. For the first time in her long television career, Joy Behar, brash, fearless, famously unshakable, sat in absolute silence. Shaken, exposed, alone. Harry adjusted his jacket, reached for the mic clipped to his collar, removed. It calmly set it down on the table. As for having it both ways, he looked her in the eye. "You're the expert. You get to call cruelty journalism. You get to profit off pain and call it accountability. You get to break people on live TV and walk away smiling." He turned, walked off the set. The cameras followed him all the way to the studio. Doors. Not a word from Joy, not a sound from the audience, just the echo of footsteps and the weight of everything he'd just said. When the doors finally closed behind him, the studio remained frozen. The other co-hosts scrambled to fill the silence, but nothing they said could undo what had just unfolded, because everyone watching knew the truth. A member of the British royal family had just dismantled one of America's most feared television. Hosts live unflinching and in real time. What did you think of that epic showdown? Did Joy go too far, or did Harry finally say what needed to be said? Sound off in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe, because this is the kind of moment that gets talked about for years,